morning and welcome to this final day here at European Utility Week. With me this morning I have Alexander Lewis Jones, who is the product manager for electricity and EVs for Delta Energy and Environment. Alex, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem, thank you for having me.
Electric vehicles, it's a big topic. I was wondering, could you perhaps share with us maybe the top 3 trends that you've been seeing coming out over the course of the research that you've been doing?
Yeah, certainly. So one thing we are finding is, EVs are coming in lots of different markets across the world, but especially here in Europe. So first of all, we're finding that there's a big dash towards acquiring charging companies. We're seeing all the big utilities making their play, finding what's going to be right for them, where in the value chain do they need to be, what kind of companies do they need to acquire. That's the first step. Secondly, we're finding a greater consumer awareness. Certainly this year we've seen people's worries about, I don't have a charger near me in my local town or road. People are realizing, now there are opportunities for me to charge at home, and that is when you move to an EV, that is the most likely place that you're going to be charging, and we're seeing that's going to be a trend that's moving forward. And finally, charging is getting cleverer, it's getting more intelligent. We are being able to not just plug in and charge as much as you can. We're finding that there are more benefits to do it in a smarter way, and there's various technologies there.
So that does bring me onto a question in terms of how are people charging? What are the patterns that you are seeing across various demographics and areas in terms of how people are utilizing this opportunity?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to say is that what is ideal for people is that their car is charged fully 100% of the time, right? So when they see these long charge times, really slow charging at home, people get concerned and think, it's going to take me 10 hours to charge up my car. Well, in reality, during those 10 hours, you're doing other things. So people are increasingly, coming home, having their charger there, plugging in their vehicle, going about the day, having their dinner, sleeping, and finding, great, I've got enough charge to go for the next day. What this is leading to is potentially a peak, an increase in the evening peak. We know that that's when we have our, across the daily profile, that's where electricity is used the most. But if everybody's coming home and plugging in their vehicles at 6 o'clock, that's going to mean a big impact for networks, for energy suppliers to make sure they can fit in with that.
So what is being done and how is it possible to manage this either extended peak or the change in load profiles that utilities are going to be experiencing?
Yeah, so at Delta EE we've done some research recently looking at what we call the smart charging landscape. There's a number of different technologies out there, all with very different names, and it's taken a long time for us to really define what exactly is going on here, what are the best options and what's moving forward. So broadly, what we can do with charge points that are being produced today is that we can have the level of intelligence attached to them and an internet connection that provides a connection to the grid data or the building data or even the user's data as well, like when are they next going to want to use their vehicle. And that can actually take that period of time that they've got and then charge dynamically. So maybe a little bit here, a little bit later on, a little bit right at the end, and make sure that it suits both the energy system and the customer's needs. So this is broadly called smart charging, and there are different generations of that, and maybe the customer's got solar panels on their roof. Great. Then maybe we can divert the solar into their car. Maybe they don't, but maybe they still want to be a renewable consumer, so they work with their energy company who might have a specific tariff that takes control of their charging but matches that with a grid-based renewables profile.
I know we touched on this very briefly just before we spoke, and I just wanted to ask, what is the impact on this dynamic charging on batteries? Because you're told plug your cell phone in, charge it fully, completely drain the battery. Do car batteries work on a similar basis?
Yeah, I mean, the battery industry is going quite a pace. So yeah, there were some very early concerns about this. Oh my gosh, like my batteries are gonna die on me. But the first kind of this generation of electric vehicle were launched in 2010, and broadly, we haven't gone through a whole life cycle of the vehicle to really know, how, is it going to completely die on me after like 15, 20 years? Typically a vehicle, car lasts for about 16 years. That's the average lifespan of it. So when we get to that, 2026, we'll really understand what the earliest generation of batteries were like. However, the results so far have been quite promising. We're finding that battery degradation is not as much as we expected. With smart charging, you're exactly right that it could mean that there's increased movement of charging at different times. And if we get to vehicle to grid, the bidirectional phase, then you're doubling the amount of movement potentially. Research is coming out to say actually we can be quite clever about battery charging management, and is a sweet spot which might allow battery degradation to actually decrease because you're using this technology. That's in its very early days, but when we see vehicle to grid chargers come to the market, which aren't quite there yet, still very much in an innovation project phase, but we will start to see whether that's correct or not.
Well, I think that's something that we'll be following very closely. It's a brave new world that we're entering.
Yeah, so it is.
Unfortunately, it is all the time that we have for this morning, but thank you so much for yours. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers.
From European Utility Week, thanks so much for watching.